On Riese Müller bikes, all the tyres and wheels are provided with inner tubes as standard, and quite often people want to know whether you can make them tubeless. Now, we've had a go at this on a few different bikes. Sometimes we've been successful, other times not so. Making a tyre tubeless is a case normally of providing a special valve that drops in where the valve was, so it completely seals, putting a tape around, and then buying a tyre that fits and locks into the rim of the wheel, and then filling it with some gunk or sort of slime, or sometimes it's called like a milk sort of stuff, that makes the seal completely. Now, benefit of the tubeless tyres, if you're talking about a road bike or a lightweight bike like that, one of the big benefits is you get away without having to carry the weight of an inner tube. On electric bikes and Riese Müller bikes, the bikes are obviously a little bit heavier because they've got the motors and the batteries. So we're not so worried about carrying the weight of the inner tube with that bike. So what we tend to do is go down the route of providing something like slime, which is like a green PVA gunk type stuff that we put inside the inner tube. And it works in a very similar way to the way that tubeless tyres works. So if you get a thorn that goes through your tyre and creates a puncture, then your tyre will deflate, but as it deflates, then the gunk or the slime that's in there will leak out, and as it leaks out, it seals it, which means you can then pump your tyre up and carry on going. So as an answer to the question, can you go tubeless? Yes, you can. It might be a bit of a pain in the arse, so we would probably prefer to go down the route of putting something like slime into the tyres. One of the concerns people have is the belt tension on their bike and how this is affected once they've removed the wheel. It depends what sort of bike you have. If you have a Super Delight or a Homage or a full suspension bike, you'll see on there's actually a pre-tensioner. So it's a sprung-loaded little jockey wheel that is holding the belt tight. Now, main reason for that is so that as the rear swing arm is moving around, then we're always holding the belt onto the rear sprocket. But it also has the benefit if it keeps the tension relatively tight as well, so you're unlikely for it to come loose. Other bikes, like hardtail bikes, then the belt is held taut by moving the axle in the frame. There's a couple of bolts that you can undo either side, and then there's another bolt that you turn to push the axle back. This is how you keep the belt taut on your bike. Now, if you were to remove the wheel, you don't actually interface with these bolts at all. So these stay in exactly the same position, and they're holding the dropouts essentially in the position you want so that the belt is taut. When you release the quick release, the wheel drops out of the dropouts and then moves forward because you've got a flat tyre. And your belt just hangs there loose whilst you go and work on your tyre. When you bring your wheel back in again and push it up into the frame, it's going to be sat in exactly the same point. So you're going to pull the tension back on to your belt with no problem at all. So by removing and refitting your wheel, essentially the answer is you're not going to have an impact on your tension on your belt. Okay, so here is how you're going to remove the wheel on a MViola hub, so known as a Vario hub on a Riese Müller bike. It's a little bit more complicated than some of the other bikes, mainly because instead of having a quick release that's going through the axle here, it's got these sort of old-fashioned nuts, one on either side, that you have to release to get the wheel out. So if you are planning to do this when you're out on a ride, make sure you've got with you a spanner or an adjustable spanner of some sort, because you're going to need these to release the nuts to get the thing off. Then once you've done that, the complicated bit is just taking these cables off so that the wheel is free. So I'll show you how to do this. First of all, let's loosen these two nuts off. Okay, that's one. That's the second one. Okay, so that's released. This piece here, so this is a guide to keep the belt onto the rear sprocket. This is actually clear of that belt, so it doesn't touch it. It just stops it stepping out over. Next thing you'll see is these little wires that need to come off. So on your Vario hub, there's two cables coming down onto it. So when you twist it, it's a push-pull action. We need to take both those off. So the first one, we lift this up, and we're going to lift this out. So that lifts off, and then this other one needs to come out over this way. Easiest way to do it is to get either a small flat screwdriver, I'm just using an Allen key here, and just leverage it up out. Bit of a faff, but try not to break the bike at the same time. There we go. So that's your two cables are now loose, so they're separate from the wheel. So what we should be able to do is lift the wheel straight out. There we go. Two cables off as well, and then move the wheel forwards. So master at work this, can you tell? There we go. And that's the wheel out. So putting the back wheel back in is a little bit more of a struggle. So we're going to drop it back down in, and what we want to do is we want to line up this axle with this dropout that's here. So belt round the outside. Make sure that these cables are clear. These little ferrules on the end here are going to feed into the end of this gear shifter. So there's two of these, they've got to feed back in here as well. And we've got to align it all as we go in. So it is a bit of a job, making sure that the rotor goes between the brake pads as it goes in. Let's get these on now. So that's the ferrules. Whoops. Into the shifter. Like say, cables are sat ready. Let's get our okay. Try that again. Okay. I think they're both located. Okay, so that's dropped in. They're both in place. Drop them. So I've just clipped this one back in place. Now I need to clip this one back in place. Clicks down over the top. Make sure that's back over the belt. Do these up. Adjustable spanner. Hope so it's set to the right size. Cool, and that should be it. So hopefully when I turn the pedal, it catches the camera.